I'd like to talk to you about a game that's important to me. It's not a masterpiece, it's not some misunderstood classic, but the exact congregation of circumstances and design decisions that birthed it led to something that I've tried and failed to categorize for nearly 14 years. I would consider it to be in its own genre. It's going to take a bit of time, but I want to convince you to care about Kirby and the Amazing Mirror. On the way, we might learn a bit more about Kirby, and if things get especially dire, I might learn a bit more about myself. For now, I'll just say that I'm thankful you've chosen to join me on this ride. Welcome to Kirby and the Amazing Mirror is a video game for the Game Boy Advance released in 2004. Building on the engine and art assets from 2002's Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland, which is a remake of 1993's Kirby's Adventure, the game has been praised by critics as, yeah, that's a Kirby game, and that's the one with the cell phone, right? As a trivia item, Amazing Mirror is known for being the last Kirby game to have any involvement from series creator Masahiro Sakurai, though his role has been downgraded from director to special advisor. The developers that he was specially advising came from Flagship, Dimps Corporation, which is a real company that decided to name itself that, and technically HAL Laboratories in a much more limited role. These devs had largely never touched Kirby before, but many would return for 2006's Kirby Squeak Squad. If you wanted to be poetic about the game, which I do, Amazing Mirror was the product of new faces building on the series' decade-old roots. Provided the year you live in is a number greater than 2004, you can play Kirby and the Amazing Mirror by either tracking down a used copy, owning a Wii U in a year greater than 2014 and less than 2023, or going to jail for video game crimes. If you do, it'll take around 6 or 7 hours until you've seen the credits of a good video game. It's good. Nobody would really call it their favorite game of all time, but it's playable and has the polish you'd expect from a Nintendo product. I'm not gonna sit up here pretending like this one game I happened to own as a kid was actually some kind of hidden gem. It's a perfect 8 out of 10. It's, in fact, exactly 80 on Metacritic. As a side note, when I was looking at Metacritic, which to be clear you should not do, I found 4 different reviews out of 24 that in their bite-sized little summaries mention Kirby being cute as a potential turnoff for people considering buying the game. These are all on the upper end of the scale too, they want you to play it despite its cuteness. So why on Kirby's Green Earth did I make a video this long about an admittedly mediocre game? Simply put, I've been thinking about this game for 2/3 of my life. I was 7 when I first played it, and I've played a lot more games in the years since than in the years prior. I've played a lot of games that remind me of other games, sometimes a whole bunch of other games, but no game has ever felt like Amazing Mirror. Year after year, I've been compelled to revisit it, both as a nostalgic throwback and as a work of game design that stands on its own. Frankly, I feel a weird sense of responsibility to give this game the time it deserves. And if nothing else, I want to answer exactly 5 questions. Question 1. How is Kirby and the Amazing Mirror different from so many other games? Question 2. What design decisions led to said differences? Question 3. Why have I kept going back to Amazing Mirror over the years, yet not done the same for any other Kirby game I've played? Question 4. Is it possible for Tornado to not suck? This one I can actually answer right now. No, it's not. See, we're already making progress. Question 5 is not actually my own. You see, a while back I was watching a Good Vibes gaming discussion on a trailer for Kirby and the Forgotten Land, a game I made this video instead of playing. This was the trailer where Kirby tried to eat a car. The crew were generally pretty excited for the game, and at some point John Cartwright posed the question,
Can Kirby be Game of the Year? Is that possible?
To be clear, Kirby and the Amazing Mirror came out the same year as Half-Life 2. I'm not gonna die on that one hill I'm sure you're all glancing at. But as I planned out this video, I kept coming back to that question. Kirby has existed in the same pantheon as Mario and Zelda ever since Smash 64, and the games are known for their consistently high quality, but none have really had a huge moment of critical celebration. Why is that? If it ever happened, what would that even look like? Now, for all I know, Kirby and the Forgotten Land is already answering that question as we speak, because I've been trapped inside a Game Boy Advance SP since March 19th, 2022. I at least know that it's the third ever video game with a title beginning in Kirby and there's a good chance I'll play it as soon as I upload this video. My point is that I'm aware I might be re-asking this question a few days too late. The stars seem to be aligning. I originally had a joke here about how the sequel to Zelda Breath of the Wild was still technically announced for this year, and then they delayed it the day after I started recording voiceover. Regardless of how long Kirby's time in the spotlight is going to last here, I think now more than ever it's good to consider what makes these games work, and Amazing Mirror is a good starting point for doing just that. I promise I'm almost ready to start answering our 4 remaining questions. Before we do, I'd like to walk you through just the first 10 minutes of Kirby and the Amazing Mirror. I haven't really talked about the game in specific yet, and I'd like to start everyone off on the same page. Consider this the youtube.com/myfirstandlastname Kirby and the Amazing Mirror unofficial strategy guide part 1, there will not be a part 2. Our game opens on Kirby, who has gone to heaven. Like all of us at some point in our lives, Kirby is faced with an enemy. Kirby inhales this enemy, using it to conquer another. The next 2 obstacles establish important game mechanics, so the Tower of Clouds reminds us that yes, Kirby can fly, and the breakable blocks teach us that breakable blocks can be broken. Then we see a mirror. Mirror is this game's way of saying door, in that it doesn't reflect anything and you can go through it to enter a new location. Room 2 introduces buttons. Press a button and a door opens for an amount of time specified by forces beyond our understanding. The first button is simple, but the second gets tricky. Unless you've brushed up on your speedrunning strats, there's not enough time to reach the door before it closes. But if one of Kirby's 3 good friends stands on the button, you can go through and hit this bomb block, which opens the way for everyone. This teaches the player about the value of teamwork and the true meaning of friendship. Beyond this, by sucking on some blocks, you can grab a single AA battery and a wrapped piece of candy that Kirby.com claims is made of meat. Room 3 is where we get introduced to copy abilities. Like all of us, Kirby can use his past conflicts to better himself, which here involves getting a sword and then setting himself on fire. Incinerate a few Waddle Dees and you can grab a big chest. As with most big chests, it contains a map. The world map. This is the world map. It looks like this. As we enter a slightly fancier mirror, we learn how to use a cell phone and then reach a cutscene. Dark Meta Knight, which is a character that exists, murders his relatively brighter counterpart, seals him in a big mirror, and breaks that mirror into 8 identical pieces. Shadow Kirby is also here. Look at him go. Anyway, this is the central hub world of Kirby & The Amazing Mirror. It's mostly empty for now, but we'll be seeing a lot of it. This is also the beginning of Area 1 Rainbow Route. There's only one mirror we can go through, which is a one-way mirror, which implies the existence of a two-way mirror, which is both horrifying and a regular game mechanic we've become accustomed to. Now is when we begin the game for real. In this forest area, you can try out some new copy abilities and open a chest that's just sorta chillin' there. After that, we do one of the most terrifying things a person can do, make a choice between 2 doors with no prior information about what's behind either one. On the top path you can get the fighter ability, and on the bottom path you can get the fighter ability. If you're wondering how this dude got stuck here, you clearly have not read the book. The bottom path also leads to a sneak peek of an area you can't get to yet, but both paths converge pretty quickly, right here. This creature is called a Bang Bang. He's not important, so you should beat the shit out of him. Shadow Kirby is also here. This warp star leads to Area 2. Here is a map of Area 2. Things are a lot more confined here, which can get a bit tricky. Those over there are some metal blocks. You can't break them, so pay them no mind. What's more important is that it's mini-boss time. This is Mr. Flosty. A lot of other Kirby games get his name wrong, but he's a pretty chill dude. Once you get past him and some bats that hate you, you enter a room exactly the size of a Game Boy Advance screen. With 2 copy abilities you can grab and a giant button. This means you've found a new connection to the hub world. These exact rooms are all over the place. You know what else is all over the place? Sections of rooms you can't get to. Or can you? This is a neat little puzzle. You have to break the first 2 bomb blocks to reach this mirror, but if you let your pattern recognition get the best of you and break the 3rd bomb block, it's inaccessible. The reward is a health refill and a distinct sense of longing. At the end of the room is a secret for the most exploration-hungry players. Oh, it's more indestructible metal blocks. Okay. Want to turn invincible? Okay, let's go! It's fun, running around, not taking damage, being free without a care in the world. I could do this all day. Wait, no, Lucas, you missed that bomb block, why didn't you? Here's some golems. They wake up when you take their food, which is cute. Golem number 3 turned himself into a button, and that's very funny. Let's fight the boss. Back at the hub world, there's a new mirror to go through. That's what Button Golem was for, by the way. Right here is where the game begins, actually this time for real, definitely for the last time. The mirror leads to another section of Rainbow Root and a big chest. If you've been paying extra close attention, you may be able to guess what extra special object is inside. If you guessed the map of Area 1 Rainbow Root, congratulations, you are a big chest expert. It looks a little something like this. Take it all in. Area 3, Area 4, Area 5, connections to bits of Area 2 we've never seen. We've cracked this game wide open, and now there's a mirror on our left and a mirror on our right. Peaks at this open-endedness have been right under our noses. Remember these metal blocks? You can break them with a few different copy abilities, but the only one that's readily accessible to us right now is Missile, which you can get by swallowing this Bang Bang. If you grab that and keep it through these next few rooms, you'll find somewhere much more threatening than anywhere we've seen so far. This is where you really notice that enemies respawn as soon as they stop looking at their homes. If you power through, you'll be rewarded with a trip straight to Area 6. This is Area 6. Eventually you'll be able to get to this room from the other way around to hit that switch, which completes the shortcut. Of course, by then it'll be completely useless connecting two extremely remote locations when everything's a few steps away from the hub world anyway, but hey, Area 6. Also from here you can go through that one inaccessible area, and if you fly up here, you'll finally get that treasure chest. Oh, were you wondering about the second set of metal blocks? The one that's tucked away where most players will just skip past? There's a bunch of stuff behind there, some mini-bosses, a few tricky treasure chests, and a warp star that leads to Area 9 Candy Constellation. This one's not even a fake out. You can do Area 9 before unlocking most of Area 1. It's great. This game is great. If I just embellished a few things and ignored all the weird bits, I could make a video arguing that Kirby and the Amazing Mirror is one of the greatest games of all time. At least a few people would believe me too. I'm telling you though, it is not. And on a similar note, it is not. Like, it really isn't. People always call it one when talking about how this game is different from other Kirby games, and I don't like that. I get that what counts as a metroidvania has always been and will always be everyone's favorite pointless gamer debate, but even by the loosest definitions of the genre, Amazing Mirror doesn't quite fit. Metroidvanias, broadly speaking, are games where you get a thing in one place and that lets you do a thing in another place. Real lock and key level design. This structure serves two purposes. For one, the game creates a powerful sense of exploration while still letting the game designers craft intentional progression. Most Metroidvania games are actually pretty linear as far as what order you'll experience their main content. I mean, sequence breaking is a thing, and some games like Hollow Knight are a bit looser with their progression than the average Metroidvania, but generally there's some sort of critical path from the start of the game to the final boss. At the same time, players constantly getting more powerful and finding new items that let them traverse old areas in new ways is just plain cool. You're constantly surpassing obstacles that were impossible just a few minutes ago, mastering the terrain and stepping closer toward becoming an all-powerful deity of the video game world. Now, Kirby and the Amazing Mirror is not that. There is exactly one example of lock and key level design in the entire game. It's that third golem in Moonlight Mansion. Pressing him unlocks the rest of the game, which you're free to explore in whichever way you'd like. If you were to chart out Amazing Mirror's progression all Game Maker's Toolkit style, it would not look very impressive. As for permanent character upgrades, if you find a few optional collectibles, your max HP can increase from 6 to 10. That's it. But if Kirby and the Amazing Mirror is not a Metroidvania, then what is Kirby and the Amazing Mirror? I don't really blame people for giving this game a slightly unfitting genre description because I honestly don't know too many reference points to compare it to. The closest I can think of is Zelda, and not like The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, which MobyGames.com classifies as a metroidvania. I mean the original Zelda, where you're dropped in the middle of nowhere and just have to follow the map inside your heart. Zelda 1 still has that idea of collecting items and getting more powerful, and even a few things you have to do in a set order, but it's honestly the best comparison I can think of. Kirby and the Amazing Mirror is a 2D miniature open world side-scroller. Feel free to rearrange those adjectives in whichever order you'd like. This is not a genre that I could come up with a second game in. Maybe you can, and if so, I would love to hear about it. They've gotta be out there somewhere. I don't even really feel right calling Amazing Mirror a platformer. You're not precisely navigating tricky jumps and deadly obstacles. You're more negotiating for space with enemies in sometimes restrictive environments. Those descriptions might sound similar, but you can feel the difference between this and, say, a Mario game. If you don't get my point here, that's fine. Maybe we just need to zoom out. Area 1, Rainbow Route, is the only area without a boss and the central ring that connects the game world. Aside from the mirror we just opened, it connects back to the central hub here, here, and here. Through Rainbow Route, you can access Cabbage Cavern, Mustard Mountain, and Carrot Castle. Upon entering a new area, you're given what could very loosely be described as a map. You can see the rooms you've been in, though only with the loosest sense of how they connect. And you can also see the rooms with a big chest where you'll find the actual map. Again, vaguely. These screens offer so little information that it's not only possible, but almost guaranteed that in at least one area, you'll stumble upon something else before finding the map. Maybe it's the boss, in which case, neat, you've found the boss. Or maybe it's a new area. Head to the far east of Cabbage Cavern and you'll find not just a shortcut to the hub, but the entrance to Area 6, Olive Ocean. Go west instead and you'll find much the same, except this time it's Area 8, Radish Ruins, a bunch of ruins that are somewhat rad. Meanwhile, near the entrance to Carrot Castle, you can cross into Area 7, Peppermint Palace. That leaves only Area 9, which is special because it is in fact in space. You can head there through Moonlight Mansion, as I've shown, or from Mustard Mountain or Peppermint Palace. Since there are 3 different ways to get there, there's a good chance it won't actually be the last area you find. You'll just be exploring somewhere and then suddenly, whoa, Area 9, that's crazy, Mario doesn't even have one of those. In total, that makes 8 bosses to fight and 8 mirror shards to collect. You can go about this in any order you so desire, and from there you're just off to fight the final boss. Let's talk about how Amazing Mirror handles the dark nemesis of video game design, backtracking. Now, okay, there's not really backtracking in the metroidvania sense where you're going back to an old area because you can do something you couldn't before. Please remember the title of this segment. As a matter of fact, you will very rarely retrace your steps in any way. Take a look at this mirror. Looks slightly larger than most mirrors, does it not? Are you overcome with anticipation for whatever could be inside? This right here is a goal room. It's Amazing Mirror's equivalent of the end-of-level bonus game you'll find in other Kirby games. It also means that you are a fool and a failure, because you've just found yourself a dead end, bucko. I didn't write bucko in the script. Whatever you've been searching for, it probably wasn't this. In every single instance of these goals, they're behind a one-way mirror with no way of turning back. The goal game itself it's fine. You might get a 1-up or 2, just don't count on it. Its main purpose is to get you right back here, to the central hub. You see, Kirby and the Amazing Mirror doesn't have backtracking, it has front tracking. At any point in the game, you can hold the L button to call up a warp star and go right back here. This is Amazing Mirror's equivalent of calling your mom when the party gets a bit too scary. If you realize you've made a mistake, you've either gone through the wrong one-way mirror or you need a different copy ability, the best thing to do is just call mom and start back from the beginning. Does this count as backtracking? Like, is restarting a Mario level because you died backtracking? What about playing a level over again because you missed a collectible? I've seen reviews mention backtracking as a point specifically against this game, and I really don't see it. It's as if they classified it as a metroidvania and then assumed that any sort of annoyance was backtracking because that's what metroidvanias are like. The amount of time spent repeating content in this game isn't even that high because you're finding new mirrors to the hub constantly. And, as we'll see in part 3, these sprinkles of repetition between chunks of new content can be unique in other ways. For now, there's one aspect of this game that is a lot like a Metroidvania. That is, of course, treasure hunting. Almost all of the gameplay you'll see in this video comes from my 100% playthrough that resulted in 6 hours, 1 minute, and 42 seconds of gameplay footage. By 3 hours, 6 minutes, and 52 seconds, only slightly over halfway through, I had obtained all 8 mirror shards, as well as every area map. If you've played a few Metroidvania games in addition to Amazing Mirror, you may recognize the situation I was in. 100% completion in this game requires visiting every room and opening every treasure chest. If you're mainly focusing on fighting bosses, there will naturally be several scraps of content you'll have to clean up at the very end. Since this is such a short game though, that cleanup can become almost the majority of a playthrough. On your map you can see visited rooms in yellow and unvisited ones in orange. If you've opened every treasure chest in a room, your map tells you this by glowing a little bit. It might seem simple enough to follow the map and closely comb the areas that aren't glowing, but what this map doesn't tell you is how much of a piece of shit it is. You know how in games like Metroid or Vania, everything is arranged in a grid so you can understand the exact relative positioning of different rooms? There is nothing like that here, just boxes connected by lines, where some boxes are bigger than other boxes, and that does not always correlate to the size of the rooms they represent. And not all rooms are interconnected. Sometimes you have to enter from one entrance in particular, and these lines don't always represent one mirror. There could be a few different connections between the same two rooms with no way of knowing that. Sometimes a mirror instead connects to somewhere else in the same room instead of a different room. Also, just as a prank, sometimes two rooms are considered the same map square for no reason whatsoever. The thing is, the fact that this map is garbage means that you have to check this map even more because when you go through one mirror, there's no telling which one you'll pop out of. Keep in mind that some mirrors are one way, so this can be a serious problem. We're also working with a tiny screen here, so there's no mini-map in sight. You have to pause the game upon entering a big chunk of the game's rooms just to make sure that a mirror led where you thought it did. Stick a pin in that one for later, by the way. I may just be too used to my other favorite Kirby game, Kirby and the Completely Unremarkable Doors connecting areas with intuitive spatial relations between one another, but this is what you gotta learn to deal with in this game. Where was I? Oh yeah, treasure hunting. You do not necessarily have to see every bit of content in Amazing Mirror for the game to consider you at 100% completion. Sometimes there's just one unexplored room connecting two you've already been in, and there's no treasure there, so you can just pop in and then call mom without really checking the place out. If a room has a secret one-up somewhere, that's fine, you can just walk right by. If that one-up is in a box, on the other hand, well, now we'll have to get serious. Because what's inside a hidden treasure chest has never been the point. The excitement comes from getting past a tricky obstacle, opening a fancy box, and knowing that that fancy box will stay open forever. That sprite will not change. It has reached its final destination. And I mean, what do you find in these treasure chests? Cherries? One-ups? Sheet music? It's disturbingly easy to go a long time playing this game without realizing that the vast majority of these chests contain nothing of value. Actually, I do have exact numbers. From what I counted, and I may have missed a few, the treasure chests in Kirby and the Amazing Mirror contain 18 health recovery items, 14 extra lives, 13 bottles of spray paint, 10 maps, 9 pieces of sheet music, 4 max HP upgrades, 1 music player, and 1 invincibility lollipop. Of those, well, obviously the maps are helpful to some extent. I'm not talking about those, they're all but part of the critical path. Besides them, I would only consider the max HP upgrades to be all that helpful or good. Justifiably, they're the hardest ones to find. On the other hand, health recovery isn't hard to come across, and also the penalty for death is just restarting the room. One-ups are slightly more helpful. Running out of lives means going back to the hub, which could lose some progress. The The downside is that your life counter resets when you exit the game, so you can't really enjoy seeing it reach the stratosphere unless you're playing the game in one sitting. The invincibility lollipop is, okay, sure, and everything else is part of the collection room. This place, right here, on the main menu. They don't affect gameplay at all, and what's more, accessing them means resetting the game and resetting your life counter. Making Kirby a different color is great, but I didn't really find one that worked for me. This one looks like regular Kirby. This one seems problematic. This one means I can't keep track of which character I'm controlling in a busy boss arena without checking for moonwalking bears. The sound test is great if you're making a YouTube video about Kirby and the Amazing Mirror and want to use some of the music, but why do you have to unlock the sound player when you also have to unlock all the sounds? The sound player isn't somewhere easy too, it's all the way off in Area 9, weird. Looking back at these so-called treasures, I realize I was trekking on purely off the thrill of the hunt and off the knowledge of an increasing progress bar on the file select screen. Maybe that's all we ever needed, really. It is one thing to mention the collectibles being bad, but another entirely to think of anything that would make them good. I will leave this challenge as an exercise for the viewer, but keep in mind that the usual go-tos here will not work. There can't be much more than 4 HP upgrades, the game doesn't have much of an increasing difficulty curve, and Kirby has to die eventually. We all do. You can't have any sort of fungible tokens for unlocking new levels like you would in a Mario game because the levels in this game are interconnected and you're supposed to be able to go wherever, whenever. The only other option I can think of is, to drop everything and go full metroidvania. Why not? I doubt anyone would even notice. Give Kirby new permanent upgrades that enhance his capabilities, culminating in an unstoppable death machine that hungers for blood. Of course, that would clash with a different game mechanic, one that's quite a bit more essential to Kirby. Hey, isn't it weird how Kirby's Dream Land didn't have copy abilities? The fact that something so essential to our understanding of what a Kirby game is just didn't exist until the second installment? Man, I really need to play Kirby's Adventure someday. Anyway, one thing that players used to more modern Kirby games can find a bit jarring about Amazing Mirror is that copy abilities are generally a lot more limited in what they can do. Amazing Mirror has 20 of what I'd consider normal copy abilities. In alphabetical order, there is Beam, Bomb, Burning, Cupid, Cutter, Fighter, Fire, Hammer, Ice, Laser, Missile, Parasol, Smash, Spark, Stone, Sword, Throw, Tornado, UFO, and Wheel. There's also Cook, Crash, and Magic, 3 single-use abilities for screen nukes and/or healing. Mini, which takes away your flight/combat abilities for a few single-room challenges. This was 2 years before New Super Mario Bros., by the way. Also, this one mini segment in Carrot Castle is the only time this game feels like a normal platformer. During the final boss fight, you wield the Master Sword, not a joke, which you can then go back and use as a skeleton key to get past any obstacle. Finally, sleep. You go to sleep. Now, copy abilities in Kirby are great in general. They add so much variety to a single playthrough and also to multiple playthroughs. But in Amazing Mirror, they're extra nice because of all that not backtracking you're doing. Even if you've gone down a path before, it's not going to feel the same if you're using Beam this time instead of Sword. There are so many more ways a scenario could play out when Kirby has one of 22 different characteristics, and half the enemies could potentially change what that characteristic is. Now, okay, most copy abilities do in fact only do one thing. That's understandable. You don't see like a Mario game with 20 unique power-ups, and no, Odyssey doesn't count. Really, there's only so much you can expect, especially with a lower budget game. And fuck, I'll say it, I think modern Kirby games give you way too many options per ability to the point where they all kinda feel the same. You can just pick the one move that's easily spammable and forget about everything else. That might be my Amazing Mirror anchoring bias showing, but also consider, it might not be. But not all copy abilities are equally one note. The range and complexity of each one will vary wildly. In fact, you know what? Let's put together a tier list. Fighter, Sword, Hammer, and Smash all have complex movesets with multiple combat options each. Now, for Hammer and Smash, this makes sense. Those abilities are locked behind mid-bosses, so they should be a bit special. But Fighter and Sword are just regular copy abilities from enemies you'll find anywhere. It's a bit weird seeing just how much more involved they are compared to similarly common abilities. In the next tier, Cupid, Missile, Parasol, Throw, Wheel, and UFO all fundamentally change up how Kirby controls. Like, technically, yeah, these abilities all do just one thing, but saying that just feels like missing the point. These are also somewhat uncommon copy abilities. At our, this is like B tier? Sure, call it B tier. We have the abilities that do just one thing, but that thing is cool enough to sort of get a pass. I'm talking here about Bomb, Stone, Burning, Laser, and Ice. All of these could have totally been fleshed out with different options, but they weren't, suckers, and we don't need to complain because they're perfectly fine as is. The word suckers also was not in the script. At the very bottom of the tier list, there's Fire, Spark, Cutter, and Beam. When people say things like, older Kirby has boring copy abilities, they're talking about stuff like this. You can spit fire, electrify yourself, throw a boomerang, or do the thing that Beam does. You know, that. That being said, you can still do cool things with these abilities, and they're all different from one another in meaningful ways. Better yet, they're not Tornado, which I intentionally excluded from this list, and if you noticed, you're a dweeb. I'm sure someone can do really cool things with Tornado, probably a speedrunner. It's just not me, and I guess it's not you either. With that, this is the last time I'll say the word Tornado in this video. So, a clear imbalance of copy abilities. How big of a problem is this? I would say, not too much of one. No matter how much you like Sword, at some point you will have taken damage, lost your copy ability, and suddenly the only enemy in reach is a Waddle Doo. Kirby's copy abilities aren't just a selection of possible playstyles, they also, by necessity, demand experimentation. The fact that enemy placement dictates what copy abilities can be found where means that this experimentation can be instantly rewarded through level design. If you see a wheelie enemy, it's probably chilling out on a long stretch of smooth terrain. If you see whatever the hell that laser enemy was called, there are also probably some diagonal walls good for bouncing lasers off of. When even these tricks aren't enough, the level designers opt for the nuclear option, ability gates. At least I call them ability gates. To be clear, what I'm talking about is any obstacle that only some abilities can pass through. These are always optional. You can beat the entire game without using a single copy ability. But if the allure of pointless treasure compels you, know that if there's an ability gate, then a corresponding ability is almost always nearby. There are a few exceptions, and yes, they do hurt a whole lot, but usually what you need is right in front of you. They're not like pink doors in Super Metroid, because I mean, why would they be? At their most obvious, ability gates take the form of metal blocks, wooden pegs, suspended platforms, and cannons. Together they make up one more justification for why most copy abilities can't just do everything in one. Of course, ability gates don't always have to be so overt. Maybe there's just a button placed at a distance and only so much time to go through the right door. Maybe there's a bomb block behind a wall and suddenly you need to remember which abilities can attack through walls. An interesting sort of anti-ability gate is a heavy block that requires the Big Suck TM. You have to ditch your ability and then watch it bounce around while you're doing the suck-in and hope that it doesn't disappear before you're done. It's intense. Sometimes though, you don't even recognize when a gate's there. The map of Peppermint Palace is located in this room. There's a door locked with a button, but the button's on the other side, so I guess we gotta find another way in, right? Basic stuff. Or so I thought until a few confused wanderings later, completely on accident. I'm being a bit unfair here. Yes, this is a slightly tricky solution for an item that, while not essential, is still a big deal for even non-completionist players. But the thing is, there's another way to get this chest. The only problem is, you have to go through Mirror! You see this goatsy looking snail creature? This is Mirror. M-I-R-R-A. I was spelling with only one R in my notes for this video, and then I had to keep doing that knowing it was wrong just so that I could control F easier. Here we see Mirror has taken a mirror hostage. Here we see Mirror burrowing into the ground, taking their precious mirror with them. When does Mirror do this? Well, whenever Mirror feels like it. Running towards them is typically bad news, and they're also sort of sensitive to sounds, I guess, sort of. Sometimes you can just go up and attack them, but that doesn't always work. Look, I have wikirby.com/wiki/Mira open in my browser right this instant. I could explain exactly what conditions cause Mira to run away and how to reliably take them out, but if I wanted to properly convey my experience with them, I specifically have to not do that. I scared Mira away more times than I'm probably even going to show in this video. Every enemy in Amazing Mirror respawns as soon as you're not looking, but Mira, if they see you, will not come back. At least not until you leave and re-enter the room. Sometimes this is easy, you just leave and re-enter the room. Other times, like if every other exit is one way only, you just have to call mom and go all the way back again. Or, and this is just a suggestion, you could just die. I found the video. It's 1 a.m. on the 7th of April. I am wrapping up editing episode 9 of Chugga Conroy's Let's Play of Kirby Triple Deluxe, which is one that I have been binging in between editing this thing because my whole life is Kirby at this point. That is the video that compares Mira to Goatsy that I sort of had in the back of my mind. I found it. My eventual strategy was to use burning. If you start from far away enough, you can get them pretty reliably. Mira's not strictly an ability gate, I guess, but they can act like one if you don't know much about them. In the same way, even though you can use stone to pound this peg, you might just not know that and start running around looking for hammer. It's easy to skip over some abilities entirely because not all of them are thrown right in your face. I used throw in my playthrough exactly once, went, oh yeah, I guess this one's pretty neat, and never touched it again. But I mean, I could have. This game encourages experimentation by making you not always be able to hold on to your abilities, but once you find your favorites, you can start using them fairly often. Each new shortcut to the hub world lets you access 2 different abilities right there with no real hassle. Once you open all of these shortcuts, you can access a room that's literally just every ability kinda sitting there. All of this is part of Amazing Mirror's amazing replayability. You can specialize in a new copy ability each time. If you wanted to know what I specialized in, well, that's a bit of a doozy. One of the 8 varieties of mid-boss in the game is a fellow by the name of Master Hand. You may recognize him from video games such as Super Smash Bros. Melee for the Nintendo GameCube. His copy ability is Smash, which gives Kirby a one-button version of his Smash Bros. Moveset. Already, this is one of the most helpful and versatile abilities in the game. The hammer alone can deal with pegs and metal blocks, and sure, throw in stone and some punches while you're at it. But the real juicy meat is his up B, Final Cutter. You won't find it in the cutter ability, but it is here. Final Cutter just says no to the idea of solid objects, turning Kirby completely immaterial in the process. For the duration of this attack, Kirby might as well be somewhere far away. He cannot take damage. Final Cutter hits things far above Kirby. Final Cutter hits things slightly below Kirby, and as if that wasn't enough, Final Cutter makes a shockwave that attacks at a distance. You can shred through bosses just by sort of sitting there, and to be clear, yes, this is also how I play Smash Bros. And sure, it can also cut ropes, might as well at this point. This move was my endgame treasure collectathon. Shortly after discovering it, I realized that Sword, one of the most common copy abilities in the game, has effectively the exact same attack. I mean, you can't use it in the air, and it doesn't come with a free hammer on the side, but that's pretty good for something that's literally everywhere. This is how I turned Kirby and the Amazing Mirror into a parody of its former self. Still can't deal with Mira, though. Look, my point here isn't that Smash is a broken ability, though to be absolutely clear, it is. What I'm saying is that there are plenty of ways to do exactly this to Amazing Mirror. Trust me, I've seen the speedruns. And you know what? Breaking video games is fun. Abusing a busted copy ability to cheese your way through what's supposed to be a hard boss battle is just an absolute blast, especially when said busted ability feels like a discovery that you made on your own. The journey from improvising from what you can find to finally cutting the game wide open to having superhuman abilities that you could still lose at any moment, that's the real progression in such a fiercely non-linear game. By the time you've finished off Dark Mind and Meta Knight's non-plagiarized Master Sword takes roost in the center of Rainbow Root, you might not even need it. There is exactly one major game mechanic in Amazing Mirror that I haven't talked about yet. I've done this intentionally. I wanted to show that you can get a complete picture of this game and understand its core appeal without even mentioning it. This one is also a bit overpowered, but I'm afraid there's no self-discovery to be found. You see, my friends, we are not alone. Remember Kirby's 3 good friends? Yeah, these guys? They don't have names, but I'd like to call them something like Robert, Patricia, and Kevin. Sound good? Good. We can forget about the fact that Kirby's 3 friends here are actually fragments of his own soul who gain sentience after a near-death experience, because that cutscene only plays when you wait on the title screen for a few seconds, and I never did that. Anyway, Robbie, Patty, and K-Dog are artificially intelligent cyber beings who roam around the game's world independently, just as you do. They don't do important things like find treasure, kill bosses, or really do much of anything, but you might just run into them every once in a while. At any point in the game, you can call up your friends by pressing the R button. Unlike calling mom, this drains a segment of your cell phone battery. You recharge your battery by picking up these battery items that are scattered throughout the world, and honestly, you're never really going to worry about running out of battery. It's fine, you have more than enough. These friends of Kirby come with a few benefits. When they arrive, you can give them a little kiss, which heals you, actually. Typically, they also bring you some food, which does the same. This is usually the main reason you're calling them. You're just low on health, and yeah, that does make the health chests an even more useless reward. If you call your friends while fighting a boss and then you die, like a baby, the boss's health won't reset as long as at least one friend is still up and fighting there. You can go pull a Jesus, and if you're lucky, your disciples will be there to welcome you back. They might also fight the boss or something, which can be fun if that happens. I'd like to take you back to that second tutorial room. On a broad level, it's meant to teach you that you can count on your friends to be there for you when you can't proceed alone. This is, of course, a lie. I hate to be the one to tell you this, but your friends fucking suck. I mean, that is a bit harsh, and yes, they are trying their best, just don't be too surprised if they abandon you in your time of greatest need. And I mean, okay, this tutorial isn't just about teamwork in general. It's also about how if Kevin steps on a button, then Kirby can go through the doorway that is opened by stepping on the button. This right here is a work of genius level misdirection. Area 4, we see this puzzle. A button, a door, and a big wall dividing them. Kirby steps on the button and goes around to the door. He can't make it in time, which is very sad. This is when you remember the tutorial. You call your friends, they press the button for you. Except they don't. They don't feel like pressing this button. Their otherworldly creators haven't programmed them to feel like pressing this button. Your disciples follow you obediently, but since your communication with the world is limited to 10 bits per frame, you can't just go and whisper in Kevin's ear, "Hey, can you just sit on that button for a sec? Hey, thanks." There are other places your friends will help you in very similar ways to right here, just this isn't one of them. The truth is that the real solution to this puzzle has always been hidden in plain sight. Right between the button and door, there's a Foley who gives the bomb ability. Just drop a bomb from above the wall, and you can make it in. Daddy R, Big P, and the Kevinator were never even part of the puzzle. So, what gives? Why is this game so inconsistent? I mean, the truth is that this is the wrong question to ask, because, well, Kirby and the Amazing Mirror is a multiplayer game. It can be played cooperatively by up to 4 people. Furthermore, I'd like to make the assumption here that multiplayer co-op was the one idea around which the rest of this game was developed. I think that somewhere along the Nintendo HAL flagship food chain, some executive handed a game designer a GBA link cable and a scrap of paper with the word Kirby on it and said, "Make me a video game, lowly peasant." This lowly peasant probably soon realized that making a video game which requires 4 cartridges, 4 game consoles, 3 link cables, and 3 real-life friends would be a bit of a tough sell, so they then focused on making a game that would be just as fun to play alone. Why I believe this so strongly is that being a multiplayer-first experience explains a whole lot about Amazing Mirror's design. That's why we don't have a set level order. You and your friends are supposed to split up and take on multiple tasks at once. The staggering advantages of just calling up your friends for healing becomes suddenly a lot more reasonable when it involves real people being pulled away from the real tasks they're in the middle of. As easy as it is to complain about the utter stupidity of my dumbass friends, programming game AI is a lot of work, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to pour that work into a low-budget handheld game for this if not to fill a hole that had already been dug. Kirby and the Amazing Mirror is, before it's anything else, a 4-player cooperative 2D miniature open world side-scroller. It's too bad the multiplayer mode sucks ass. Okay. To be fair, I personally have not played Amazing Mirror with anyone other than myself. This is the one place in this video where I'm going purely off of secondhand information. And to be clear, that is the first problem with the multiplayer. It's about as inaccessible as it gets. Unlike with a console multiplayer game, everyone needs their own separate cartridge to play, and unlike with an online multiplayer game, they all have to be in the same room. I mean, okay, what are the odds you'd even know one person, let alone 3 people, who owned this game when it was new? Amazing Mirror sold, it sold well, but nowhere near games like Pokemon, the worst Mario Kart game, a port of Super Mario World, a port of Super Mario Bros. 2, a port of Super Mario Bros. 3, a collection of arcade games from the 80s, a collection of arcade games for the 80s and 90s, a port of Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island, a port of The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, the worst version of the original Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, a port of Super Mario Bros. 1, or even Wario Land 4. Man, the GBA was something. Let's do the math. Say you wanted to have a 4-player Amazing Mirror game night in the United States in, let's say 2006. We have estimates that the game at that point had sold around 620,000 copies in the US. Comparing that to the 33.63 million GBAs sold, again just in the States, you'd need to be friends with, on average, 163 other Game Boy Advance owners for 3 of them to probably maybe own a copy. If you played this game's multiplayer with a full group of 4 back in the day, it was almost definitely because one person in your friend group was convincing enough to make the rest of you go out and buy the game. In that case, the joke's on them because you might not have had that great a time. Like, remember what I was saying about the map? It sucks, right? Having to constantly check it to see where you are. Think about the implications of that for just a second. You are pausing the game every time, which means nobody else can play as long as you're on that menu. Your 3 real-life best friends are suddenly glaring at you because they've just been ripped away from whatever important thing they were doing, all thanks to you not keeping your bearings straight in a video game you made them all go out and buy. Consider these 4 chests. They're the ones with the little hearts that increase your max HP. Say during a multiplayer session, a player opens one of these. Who do you think gets the increase? A, every player. B, whoever opened the chest. C, a randomly chosen player. Or D, nobody at all. If you chose E, player 1 every time, congratulations, you're still technically wrong. Yes, vitality always goes only to whichever player's keeping the save file, and that is weird, but there is a way to fix it, so it goes to everyone. More than any of this, the one complaint I see about Amazing Mirror's multiplayer is just all the lag. And yeah, lag sucks, and there's not much I can say about it. It can ruin a video game, and clearly the GBA link cable in this case wasn't quite up to the task. And that's what's such a shame about all these problems. They're clearly all just there because of some technical hurdle that nobody saw coming. There are no bad design decisions here, just a small development team being a bit too ambitious about a game that wasn't really meant to be. The tragedy is that a version of Amazing Mirror without these limitations would have kicked ass. Like, say you forgot about the lag and the pausing and the absurd hardware requirements and my own personal lack of meaningful social interactions. What you're left with is amazing? Suddenly this 6-hour game becomes even shorter since everyone's multitasking, which is perfect for one Saturday game night. You're cooperating to fight bosses and solve puzzles while also being able to go wherever independently, and suddenly you have the push and pull of the individual versus the group with all the interesting social interactions that emerge from it. Even when everyone's off in different corners of the map doing their own things, there's still that sense of contributing to a common goal. This is a co-op game for introverts. Unfortunately, that game will never exist. That is, unless some maverick programmer pulls off enough reverse engineering wizardry to get the game running online with rollback netcode and a solid 60 FPS. I will not be that programmer, and I have no idea how much work that would entail, probably orders of magnitude more than anyone cares enough about this game to do, so for now we're stuck with what we have. A 4-player co-op game best enjoyed alone. A single-player, 2D miniature open-world side-scroller designed in part by accident. For my 7th birthday, my present was a Game Boy Advance SP and a bag of miscellaneous used games. There was Mario Golf for Game Boy Color, Shaman King Master of Spirits, which was a really weird one to play with absolutely no context. But the one game that immediately caught my attention was, of course, Home Alone 2 Lost in New York. After I was done getting Kevin McAllister murdered by vicious hotel staff, I turned my attention to a cartridge with a very circusy looking label. I had never heard the name Kirby before, and from what I remember from playing, my initial reaction was pretty much what I said in part 1 of this video. Yeah, this is okay. Eventually I played Super Smash Bros. Brawl, and all of a sudden I knew the existence of a lot of video games. From there, it wasn't that long until ads for Kirby's Epic Yarn showed up in National Geographic Kids. The forces of marketing had officially reached my tiny little brain. At the same time, all the kids at school with lenient enough parents started talking about Halo Reach. All I had was a Wii, but even I started forming ideas about what new video games were supposed to look like. Meanwhile, I kept returning to Amazing Mirror, slowly getting deeper into it and appreciating it more and more. Despite all this, a tiny handheld game inserted into the bottom half of a DS Lite felt limiting, like I was missing out on something big that I couldn't put my finger on. It didn't take long until the game industry offered me just that. Kirby's Return to Dreamland felt targeted specifically at me, promising a game just like the one I started to love, but free of the constraints of age that, in hindsight, probably didn't really actually exist. When I played Return to Dreamland, I thought it was just okay yet again. At its most basic, I wondered why the game had levels instead of one interconnected world. I loved games like New Super Mario Bros., but my anchoring bias for this series in particular had solidified. More generally, I felt like there was something there in Amazing Mirror that was now gone. A decade later, I have an idea of what that might have been. As of my 7th birthday, my favorite game of all time was Animal Crossing. It's the reason I wanted a Game Boy Advance for my birthday. Shout out to all the other former e-reader owners out there. I saw video games as places that you could visit. Playing games felt like going on vacation, complete with mom and dad buying all the junk food they wouldn't buy normally. I had a copy of Wind Waker, and I spent most of my time with that game just staying on Outset Island, having a good time. I found that secret room in one of the houses, and I declared it my secret hideout. As much as I got to know the residents, I never talked to the guy who gives you the sword because he was scary, and I just didn't want to hang out with him. I enjoyed the game for hours without even reaching the inciting incident. This same idea of video games as places was what drew me into Amazing Mirror. On a practical level, I sucked at video games, so a game where you could go anywhere let me see more of the content without having to prove my non-existent skill. I think this advantage alone is something more people making games for kids should consider. But on a deeper level, this mirror dimension was a place I could just visit, like Outset Island, or whatever nonsensical string of characters I named my Animal Crossing town. When I eventually played Return to Dreamland and later played Planet Robobot, the focus and design had shifted in fundamental ways. But more importantly, I was starting to grow up. Today, making this video, I am not 7 years old. I don't care whether or not you believe me on that. All I'll say is that what I get out of video games as an adult is something completely different and a bit more abstract. I've played a lot of games, thought a lot about games, and even by technicality made a few games of my own. Most of them are unfinished, all of them are terrible, so let's pretend I just didn't say anything there. At this point, I've at least realized that you have to talk to the old man to get the sword, which you can use to chop down the trees, behind which is a trigger for the cutscene that progresses the game. Over these years, I've learned to see games as systems and to appreciate them in a whole new way. I play games less to vacation into their worlds and more to vacation into myself. I love RPG combat systems, murder mysteries, precision platformers, and comically dense lore. Playing a game is to enter this snow globe of a world where every rule is absolute, every question has an answer, and every obstacle can be conquered. Throughout all of this, I've still loved playing Kirby and the Amazing Mirror. In the time between my 7th birthday and today, I've essentially played the game in slow motion. I didn't beat the final boss until I was in middle school. The boss endurance mode, which is the reward for 100% completion, was something I found out about through a task in my YouTube recommendations. That being said, don't think I've just been one file this whole time, far from it. Amazing Mirror is short enough that you can beat it in one sitting at a family gathering you'd rather not be at. It's such a maze, such a maze. Okay, it is 5:17 p.m. on the 21st of March 2022. I have at this exact time working on outlining the script for the Amazing Mirror video. I just now, exactly this moment, realized that it's called Amazing because it's a maze. The game is such a maze that no matter how many times you've played it before, you'll never remember everything. On the other hand, every new playthrough bakes a little more of the map into your skull. Last September I had a power outage that lasted for 2 whole days, the first of which just had to be the release date of Deltarune Chapter 2. Since every other way I like to spend my time was out of the question, and the Game Boy Advance has such a good battery life that I sometimes forget it even needs charging, I timed myself to see how fast I could finish Amazing Mirror without looking anything up. By my second playthrough I was under 2 hours, and I figured it'd be pretty easy to get down to 1 hour, but unfortunately, the lights came back on before I could reinvent the any % route from scratch. There's just something comforting about the small and simple form factor of a Game Boy Advance SP combined with vague memories of childhood. This comfort has carried me toward a chance to form a new kind of love for Amazing Mirror. I can appreciate the world design, the variation in basic character control, even exploiting the hell out of some broken game mechanics. I can appreciate Amazing Mirror as part of its own genre, creating an overall set of systems unlike anything else I've ever played. Even with all this, I can't quite separate it from those memories. Look, this is my first time making a video that's remotely like this one. I've had to struggle with some difficult questions. Not like the questions I asked in part 1, questions like how can I transform an unorganized list of disparate thoughts into a cohesive whole? How do you manage an editing project involving over 100 gigabytes of game footage? What are Master Hand's pronouns? Questions like those. But one of the thornier questions I've asked myself is, can I even give any meaningful criticism of a game that's so entangled in my oldest memories? My only answer is that I can't look at Kirby and the Amazing Mirror like some sort of objective, detached observer. To do so would be like looking myself in the eyes, and as we've established, none of the mirrors here are very good at reflecting anything. I can't talk about Amazing Mirror as someone who played it for the first time in 2022, or even as a longtime Kirby fan looking back at that one weird game from the GBA era. The closest I could do would be to look back at something else. Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland is a video game for the Game Boy Advance released in 2002. Remaking 1993's Kirby's Adventure, the game has been praised by critics as, "I'm getting deja vu," and "oh hey, it's like the other one except different in places." I had never played either version of Kirby's Adventure before, and as someone making a video about not just Kirby in general, but the game that immediately followed up Nightmare in Dreamland, that needed to be rectified. I didn't even skip the intro cutscene this time. I can confidently report that this game begins with the day everyone in Dreamland stopped having dreams, which is a huge branding problem, but also, holy shit, that's spooky. Seriously, how many nights would it take until you noticed? Now Kirby must save Dreamland from the god-chosen regent of standard definition, King DVD. My 88% playthrough of this game lasted a brisk 2 hours, 23 minutes, and 47 seconds, and on that I can confidently say that, yeah, this one's pretty good. My playthrough was pleasant. Individual stages are quick and breezy, as you'd want in a game like this, especially on a handheld system. But lurking behind this joy is a slight hint of darkness. Sometimes you enter a mid-boss chamber at only 1 health and you realize that nobody's there to save you. Going through this game, the remake of the sequel that defined Kirby, I saw the seeds that would one day sprout into the Amazing Mirror, which is a plant now in this metaphor. Nightmare in Dreamland does have levels, and even levels inside those levels, but it also has branching paths, secrets, and treasure chests behind metal blocks. In world, I mean area, I mean level 3, Butter Building, which is presumably a building made out of something other than what most buildings are made out of, you'll come across a familiar sight. Those big juicy buttons are back, or should I say they were always there. You'll see plenty of these across the game, and they unlock optional content like minigames and boss arenas. You're finding things in one place that let you move further in a different place. You might even call it It may have taken me just under 14 years to understand the title of my very first Kirby game, but I had no trouble finding a sense of adventure in this one. Also, the remix title is just extremely literal. It's this guy. He's the Nightmare in Dreamland. In Amazing Mirror, the 9 areas are littered with mid-bosses. Sometimes they're your traditional bad guy guarding a treasure chest or blocking the one way forward, but it's never a guarantee. Sometimes there's a way around them, other times you just made the wrong turn. The world doesn't always feel perfectly laid out for you, sometimes you just make a wrong turn and drop into a bat's nest. This is done exactly the same in Kirby's Nightmarish Dream Adventure. Even in a game with levels, not every mid-boss is blocking the big important rest of the game. Sometimes you'll even fight 2 mid-bosses at once, like with the Poppy Bros Senior and Poppy Bros Senior. Here's 2 pink Mr. Flosties. Why are they pink? They just sort of are. Sometimes enemies are different colors for no discernible reason. My absolute favorite mid-boss is in level 6, Orange Ocean, an ocean with a very specific color that I would reveal to you for only $4.99. You're fighting a fan, but in shallow water, so your abilities are different in the air versus on the ground. And yes, he's completely optional, there's not even any reward for defeating him. This type of looseness feels like an early installment thing that would later be streamlined into the 3 optional collectibles per stage of modern Kirby. The fact that Amazing Mirror descends directly from this old school remake might explain part of its weird, sometimes confusing level design. By the way, this guy is called Mr. TikTok. That's not important. You know what else about Amazing Mirror starts to make a bit more sense now? All those chests with health recovery items. In the first stage of level 2, Ice Cream Island, a place which no longer exists due to climate change, you see this door that seemingly leads nowhere, just a cave with a little energy drink. I was genuinely confused at first, like, was that it? Later on, I fought Mr. Flosty in an arena and all I got for it was this lousy tomato, and I was similarly confused. A few levels later, I realized, health matters in this game. It turns out when you can't just press the R button for your 3 sugar parents to load you up, HP is something you have to manage. To Kirby, death isn't that big a deal, but you still automatically lose your copy ability. Even if that weren't the case, having 1 health in the world map, allowing yourself time to realize that whatever door you enter has a good chance of killing you, makes you a bit antsy. Or you could just go kill Flosty again for another tomato, it's pretty easy. I ended up murdering several Mr. Flosties because I am not good at this video game. I shouldn't say that, it's not my fault I keep dying, it's just that I'm used to Amazing Mirror and the physics here are slightly different to the point where I just feel a bit clumsy all the time. It's like if you suddenly stopped having dreams, you wouldn't notice at first, but things just feel a bit wrong for reasons you can't put into words. If nothing else, I have an excuse for not dodging these blue bullets on a bluish background, that sucks ass. Never mind the fact that I died 5 times to the phase after those blue bullets, Kirby games can be hard exactly because of their reputation for being easy, you start to underestimate them. Either that or it's the much simpler explanation that after all these years I still am not very good at video games. Wait, you can eat food with your mouth? Holy crap, you can eat food with your mouth. Amazing Mirror never— Okay, I just checked and Amazing Mirror has always let you consume both food and batteries with your mouth. A whole bunch of copy abilities in Amazing Mirror were lifted directly from here. The point about copy abilities being limited in scope gets put into perspective when you see there's sometimes even simpler forms here. Parasol has gone from a continuous attack to just 1 hit at a time. The wheel ability can't jump, which requires you to have faith in the level designers not suddenly dropping you into a bottomless pit. I talked about Sword being noticeably more complex than similarly common abilities, and it turns out that is partially Mirror's doing. Nightmare in Dreamland has your regular and aerial attacks, but the cool combos and Final Cutter knockoff are nowhere to be found. Because of this, I had to find something else to spam constantly. I could have gone all in on Laser, which I finally realized is just unfairly good. I always dismissed it in Amazing Mirror for some reason, but using it here and realizing you can literally just sit in the corner and watch bosses bleed to death finally did it for me. But no, what I ultimately fell in love with was something new, or at least new to me. There are a handful of copy abilities that didn't make the train to Mirrorland, mostly for understandable reasons. Kill a boss and grab Backdrop Kirby, why not? You can't forget about Ball Kirby, where Kirby transforms into a squishy pink ball. It's like they just took a placeholder sprite and left it in the final game. Rising above those is a third ability, one that at first I didn't even notice. I'm being serious, I thought it was just a different take on an old ability until I saw that old ability also come back. I'm talking about Freeze. Freeze is fine. It's a combination of spark and ice. You make a cloud of ice around yourself and can kick away enemies that get caught in it. It's distinctly not overpowered in any way, I just loved using it. You can turn yourself into a big death orb TM and just throw yourself at enemies. As soon as I found it, I decided it was my go-to. In typical Kirby fashion, I lost that go-to a lot and was forced to actually work with a wider variety of abilities, but I grabbed it every time I could. Freeze gave me the experience of going to town with an ability that isn't really that special, only fueled by my idea of what it could be if I just got good with it. I did all this despite the fact that Kirby wears an adorable blue parka while using it. I've called Amazing Mirror a low-budget game a few times this video, but playing Nightmare in Dreamland gave me an appreciation for the tiny bits of polish that Flagship sprinkled throughout their follow-up. When you commit murder in Dreamland, the deaths are snappy and instantaneous. That's fine and all, but Amazing Mirror's enemies have meat. You can just keep wailing on a corpse with no regard for what's actually necessary. Every enemy in Amazing Mirror has a visible health bar, but anything less than a mid-boss pretty much has no actual health. It's just an excuse to desecrate some corpses, and that's great. Forget about the incremental improvements to copy abilities though, look at Kirby's basic inhale. In Nightmare, this ability just kinda sucks. And it'll keep sucking as long as you hold down the B button. I know it's common knowledge that Kirby sucks, but in Amazing Mirror, the suck has a full-on story arc complete with character development and a valuable moral lesson. Kirby sucks. If that doesn't cut it, he sucks harder, pushing himself to his physical limits. This phase of the suck is when you can inhale larger enemies like golems. However, if even this doesn't lead to a solid object entering Kirby's mouth, the Pink Punisher can only collapse in defeat. He's flown too close to the sun, and now he can suck no more. All drama aside, this change genuinely makes playing as regular Kirby a good deal more interesting and dynamic. This kind of attention to detail and even the simplest game actions is commendable, and it's not the type of thing you'd even think to comment on without a more basic comparison. Kirby has been a series about adventure since at least 1993. In 2002, this adventurous spark was reignited by one team of developers, and all another team of developers had to do was rearrange a few puzzle pieces. Of course, they did more than that. They polished their foundation, experimented with new ideas, and ultimately wound up right in the middle of a long list of weird Kirby games and in the deepest memories of a few weird 20-somethings. In 1998, The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time fundamentally reshaped an entire series of games to a degree on par with its very first installment. We celebrated it by calling it the greatest game of all time for over a decade. Nowadays, if someone asks, "What's your favorite Zelda game?" and your answer is not The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, you aren't considered cool and nobody will want to hang out with you. I'm including myself in this category, by the way. Will there ever be a time when Amazing Mirror is the cool person's Kirby game? I highly doubt it, but what I can say is that absolutely nothing in Kirby and the Amazing Mirror is pulled from left field. It had all been sleeping here this whole time. Maybe it still is. Can a Kirby game be Game of the Year? Kirby's been around for 3 decades, and it's nested itself in a safe formula, albeit with weird experiments on the fringes, but why should that stop it? Look, I've made several comparisons to other games in this video, including with 2 different Zeldas, but I've purposely avoided directly comparing Kirby and the Amazing Mirror with The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. That would be ridiculous and embarrassing, even for me. But it is pretty tempting, huh? A shadowy figure unleashes chaos on the peaceful world, a recognizable and beloved video game character tries to stop it, but is sealed away in the center of the map, bosses to fight at the edges of the world in any order, weapons that break easily, forcing you to make the best of whatever's around, easily abusable game mechanics, sometimes maybe put there on purpose, a final boss that starts out normal until you get on a mount and just shoot it a whole bunch. Only some of those comparisons are me cherry picking. If you were to make a 6-hour-long remake of Breath of the Wild for Game Boy Advance, it wouldn't not look a bit like Kirby and the Amazing Mirror if you squinted your eyes just a little bit. But I would obviously never make that comparison explicitly. Not only is Amazing Mirror not Breath of the Wild, there aren't any Kirby games that are to the series what Breath of the Wild is to Zelda. I mean, maybe Forgotten Land is now, I wouldn't know. Maybe the difference is genre. Kirby has firmly committed to being a 2D platformer from the release of Kirby 64 all the way to the day after I wrote this sentence in my script. You could ask, as I actually did, if any game in such an old genre could break new ground in the present day, and then you too could look stupid because you forgot such an obvious exception. What both of these absurd non-comparisons to modern classic video games might point to is that if a Kirby game were to secure a 9 in the first digit of its Metascore, it would have to completely reinvent itself in such a way that spotlights why people have always loved these games in the first place. And I think Amazing Mirror might be the key to answering this. In my playthrough and analysis of both this game and its predecessor, I've identified 3 points that, in my admittedly limited perspective, constitute the core values of Kirby. At the most basic, Kirby is about improvisation. Not a stressful life or death type of improvisation, but a more carefree variety. You're being forced to use what's around, but what's around is usually just a good time. Call it the whose line is it anyway of video games. Everything's made up and the points reset when you turn off the game, so who gives a shit? Hand in hand with this is that Kirby games are about trickery. Beating the system, if you will. Kirby from the beginning was a 2D platformer where you could fly. They're games that make GameShark codes obsolete. When you find that one copy ability that destroys everything in its path, intended or not, it's as much a part of the game as eating a lollipop to become invincible. Finally, and it took me a long time to realize this, Kirby games are about adventure. Even the most linear of levels have a sense of discovery, where the path forward is not instantly obvious. This even extends to the ultra-challenging side modes hidden behind yet more optional challenges, hiding the weirdly dark bits of lore that you've surely heard about from other YouTube videos. If you wanted to make a radically different Kirby game that brings all 3 of these values to the forefront, letting them shine in new ways, Amazing Mirror would be a pretty good place to start. A game like this, with a AAA budget and some smart design decisions, would make Kirby as a series a lot harder to dismiss. So yeah, fuck it. Hey, HAL Laboratories, make Kirby Breath of the Wild, you fucking coward. You heard me, this is how I'm ending the video. Alexa, play Candy Constellation. Video's over, by the way. With every project like this, on this scale, I go through like phases, sort of waves of this is the greatest thing I've ever done, and good God, this is terrible, this is gonna embarrass me for the rest of my life. I'm not gonna tell you which of those ends I'm on right now as I record this, though I have been on both throughout making this video. I think the best thing to do when you're faced with that kind of thing is just say, okay, this is a learning experience. This will improve the next video. And for sure, if I do another video that's like this, I will definitely do it a lot better. And I want to do that. I would love to do another video like this. I have an idea for what it's going to be about. I hope it's going to be a lot shorter than this, because otherwise I will probably never finish it. Fun fact, let me see if I have it somewhere. This cartridge, my original Amazing Mirror cartridge, I have had it in my SP at my desk throughout working on this, and I've frequently used it to fact check stuff and the like. All the actual gameplay footage you saw was captured in an emulator, but this was nice to have. And originally, my plan for the intro of this video, it was going to start with me, like camera footage of me playing this, and then fade out to the game capture, and that was going to be pretty cool. I did not do that because I was going to record that today, and when I went to turn this on, the save data was corrupted. This cartridge served me well for 14 years, and then on the very last day of making a video about it was when it decided to go boom, and now it just crashes when I try to start the game. While editing this, I played through Kirby Squeak Squad. Squeak Squad. It's genuinely like my favorite name for a video game, right next to Virtue's Last Reward, which is a game I really want to play but haven't yet. And also Superstar Ultra. Most of Superstar Ultra. What I have not played is Kirby and the Forgotten Land, and I've tried to avoid any information about it. What has leaked through my skull has been very positive. The game is downloaded on my Switch, and I decided pretty quickly that that would be my celebration for finishing this, to go play that. It'll definitely be very interesting after making this video playing a new Kirby game that a whole lot of people are talking nicely about and is very different from other Kirby games. Please do comment with your favorite 2D miniature open world side scrollers. I know there are more out there. There's so many games I haven't played. I'm sure there are several, even several fairly prominent ones I just didn't think of or haven't heard of for some reason. Alright, this has to end eventually, so